Hello, so this is my first class on YouTube as far as a live format. So playing around with the angles. So today it'll be a vertical line and we'll see how it looks after the class, and maybe I'll get an additional lens to make the room be wider. But you can always leave comments, questions if you have anything about the class that I could help you with. I'll start the class in a few minutes. Good morning, Lisa.
Hi, John. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good.
Family's good?
Yeah, everybody's well. Everybody got over their COVID.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Nova. How are you?
Happy New Year. Both.
How are you?
Good.
You're good. You just had a Mandarin class.
You did a what class?
Mandarin.
Cool.
You want to turn it up?
Yeah, I can really hear
Are you enjoying it?
that. Yes.
Good. I love to watch the pictures that your dad posts on Facebook of you doing all these fun sports activities.
Yeah.
Being,
He
and-
started basketball yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm mostly into soccer though.
Oh, he's really into soccer these days.
And that's fun.
Yeah.
Mhm. Maybe we'll play later today.
Ooh, yeah, it's supposed to be nice out today.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
How you doing, Ken?
I'm great, John. How are you?
I'm well. Did you go on your trip?
I went to Puerto Rico. Yes, it was
N-
fun.
Nice. What side were you on?
Near, not far from San Juan.
Okay. I've never been to San Juan.
Rio Grande,
Yeah.
for what it's worth.
That sounds fun.
Say again?
Someplace called Rio Grande.
Okay. I've never been to that side. We always went to the beach side when we went. We've only gone a couple times. It's nice.
It's maybe, yeah, I'm sure you've been there. It's where we were was the beach. Was also the jungle, the rainforest rather.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was more, I believe, on the western side where there's more we did some surfing there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But we never flew into San Juan. But I hear it's great. I heard it's really an interesting place.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we'll catch up later.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to leave early.
Okay, yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay.
We'll catch up and maybe we'll do some privates later. That'd be lovely.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Good to see you. Hi, Lois.
Thank you for having the class.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning. So I'm gonna start the class standing, but you could always take stuff out. You don't have to do everything. But as you come into a standing position, you can kind of have your feet. I'm gonna have my feet about the width of my hips, and then with my feet just the width of my hips, I'm gonna move the weight into my right foot and into the left. So just kind of transferring the weight from side to side. And then as I'm moving the weight around, I'm gonna try to get my pelvis to move in space, so it's just moving down and up. And let's say it's your upper body that moves, that's okay. I like bending my knees, and then it gives me a little bit more of a release where I can pull the hip down, the pelvis down. And some people work better with like more of a anterior tilt and a pelvic tilt. But I'm gonna come into the middle, and when I come into the middle, I'm gonna circle my hips in a circular rotation. And this is typically sometimes a little bit easier for people. Some people are better off with a small circle rather than a big circle. Sometimes I'll slow it down, not incredibly slow, but I find that adjusts my body better than a faster speed. I'm gonna slow it down and then carry around in the opposite direction. And some people, they struggle with their pelvis. They may actually need to move only in one direction rather than both. All right? And then I'm gonna come into the middle. And when I come into the middle, I'm gonna tilt forward into a forward bend to any degree. And when I'm looking forward, I don't have to look as far forward as I can, but some of the time I'm going to look forward, and that's going to help stretch out the upper body more and the legs. So if I'm looking to the floor, if I was hanging down, right, these are good ways of forward bending, but I'm going to push through the feet and lift through the torso. And I'm just going to do that one more time. So when I'm coming forward, a good thing to observe is what angle you could be in, right? You could certainly be lower than I am, but maybe the high angle is actually going to be better depending on how tight you feel today. So we're going to push through the feet, we'll lift through the torso, and we'll be up into a standing position. So I'm going to have my feet just standard as they are, but I'm going to hook the thumbs and lift up onto my toes. So as my heels are up, I could look at that one spot that's in front of me that's going to make it easier to balance. But if I could, I'm not going to turn the head. I'm just going to move the eyes to 3 o'clock. I'm going to look center and then look to 9 o'clock. And then as I'm just looking at me, actually take you off balance, I'm going to look center and then just lower the heels. I'm going to lift back up onto the toes. I'm going to look to 12 o'clock. So maybe looking up towards the ceiling. I'm going to look down to the floor, which is 6 o'clock. And then we'll lower the heels and we'll take the arms into a cactus position. So we'll lift the arms all the way up overhead and we can come up onto the right foot. So I'm balancing on my left foot. And if I turn my head before I turn my body, that might help you twisting. So I'm going to take the right arm forward and then the left arm back. And it's not that you have to look further behind you, but there's more twisting involved if we do that. Right? You could certainly be just looking to the side wall for yourself. So we'll come up in space, we'll bring the left foot down, we'll take the arms down. I'm going to take the right foot up off the ground, I'm going to lift the arms up overhead. And then again, if I turn my head before I turn my body, it may help you in twisting more. You know, what I find people is they don't want to fall out, which is obviously a good concern to have. But if I can balance myself, well, then maybe I can look further behind me where I'm looking over my right hand. So we'll come back up and we'll take the arms down and the foot down. So I'm gonna just change my position just so that you can see me a little bit better, but I'm gonna swing my right leg forward and back in space. So just really light, not like I'm kicking my leg up really high. And I think this low level swing is pretty good for just about anybody, you know, but as I'm moving it in space, you'll start to notice that it's gonna stretch out the upper body more. We're gonna bring your right foot down and then swing your left leg forward and back. And then as you're moving it, not that the arms have to move, but it's like a counterbalance. You know, this is contralateral, just like walking, right? So as we're moving, right, you can keep expanding up through the upper body. And then we'll bring your left foot back down. Now I'm gonna take my right foot up and I'm gonna circle my right leg in space, if I can. So I like to create like a big motion, and this will help with swinging the leg higher, right? Or, you know, bigger ranges of motion. And then we'll bring the right foot down and we'll take your left leg up in space, and I'm circling out. You could circle in too. Just for time, I'm just moving in one direction, right? And then just back into the center. One time we'll come forward into a forward bend. So all the way forward into an extended 90-degree angle forward bend, but I'm gonna try and lift and lower my toes. So that as I'm lifting and lowering my toes, I lift through the right side, then the left, almost like wiggling your toes. But then you can start to, if you can start to pick up the front of the foot. Again, not like a critical thing. Most things that I instruct people on, they're not like critical that you know, do exactly as I'm saying. But we're gonna lift all the way up into a standing position, and then when we come off, we're gonna step your left foot forward in space and just transfer the weight forward into the left foot, but then just move it back into the right. I'm gonna pick up my left foot up off the ground. I'm gonna move forward into my left foot, take my right foot up off the ground. I'm gonna bend my left knee and move back into my right, and then my left foot's up. I'm gonna bend the right knee, and then the last time we'll come forward. So that when you come forward, you're up in this upright position, and when you're tipping forward, just like we did in the, having both legs down on the ground, right, in the standard forward bend, is that I wanna see how high or how low I should be. Like if we were doing this for like a minute, right, you could kind of see what angle you need to be in. So I'm extending up away from the back leg. Bottom leg could be bent. right? And I always say this, if you're weaker in your legs, a bent knee position might actually be better. So we're gonna bend the left knee to come up into a high lunge or into a warrior one. And then as I'm up in an overhead position, is I could be leaning forward or I could be leaning back. Like back is more stretching. And back is actually more demand on the back leg, right? But if I'm in the middle, it's more neutral, right? But I'm trying to expand up in all different directions, not just up and down, right? I'm trying to get out wider. So I'm gonna open up into a warrior two, and then as you're in warrior two, you can push the legs apart. And as you drive the legs apart, I'm always trying to get more space in between my upper body, right? I like taking the arms down from time to time just to relax the shoulders. And then you can move the arms out and you can be a little bit more constructive with how to extend through the arms. So we'll turn through the left palm if you can, and you can lean back into the right side. And when you lean back into the right, like having the hand on the leg is a great way. But if you needed more leverage, it would be making the hand lighter or actually taking it off the leg. Right? It always depends on how much leverage I need. So I'm gonna come back into a warrior two and bring my left forearm on my left thigh. And I'm just gonna let my right shoulder kind of sag down where I'm almost like in a lunge. But then I'm gonna turn through the torso, turn through the upper body. We'll take the right arm up in space and I'm gonna reach the right arm forward. And there's many things that you could reach for, like a corner of a wall, the ceiling, a chair, whatever's around you, you could reach for. And you can find different angles that can help you with your shoulders. So we'll push through the left foot, we'll bring yourself back up into a warrior two, and we'll have your left leg strong and straight. I'm gonna move my right foot in a little bit closer, and we're gonna reach out with the left hand. And then as you go out, you can keep the hand up, or bring it onto the shin or the thigh, and the right arm is up. Right? It's not that you have to be perfectly in line with your pelvis, but we can try, right? I'm gonna try to turn towards that right shoulder, towards the right arm. And then as I'm pushing through the feet, right, I'm trying to move my upper body in space. Same thing, you could take the arm forward like we did earlier, but maybe like it up. Maybe up is better. So we'll take the arm back up and you can lift yourself all the way back up into a standing position. And I'm gonna turn both of my feet in and I'm gonna just do a 90-degree angle forward bend, but with my legs wide. So when I'm coming forward, and I say this often in these classes, is that if I'm actually not getting as low as I can go, I can keep getting lower and lower and go further and further. But if I really, really push it, just like a beginner would do in like their first yoga class, you almost feel like you're stuck. You feel tighter than you actually are. So we'll lift ourselves up in space, and you can toe heel the feet in a little bit closer, and then I'll just step the feet back into the middle. And I'm gonna do an easy twist to the right. So I'm just twisting my upper body to the right. And how much you use your eyes really makes a difference in how much you twist. So I'm looking more level, I would say like eye level. But when I'm looking to the right, if I look more towards behind me, but towards the ceiling, I'll feel my upper body lifting more. So we'll turn forward and we can twist to the left. And then as you twist to the left, you can look over the left shoulder. And most people have an easier side to twist to. This is my side. It's much easier for me to twist in this direction. So I'm gonna try to look a little bit higher than eye level, like forehead or where the wall and the ceiling meet. And then I'm just gonna turn back into the middle. I'm gonna have my hands on my hips. I'm gonna come forward in space, extending forward, right? Think someone's pulling back through the thighs. And if you really feel that it's necessary, the knees can bend, right? Which is really, really good for the upper body. So we'll push through the feet, we'll lift our torsos up in space, and you can just relax through the arms. So I'm just turning so that I'm at the front of my mat or the back of my mat. I'm gonna step my right foot forward, and I'm just gonna move the weight into my right foot, just kind of getting the weight here. You can feel how the weight feels. But I'm gonna transfer the weight into my left foot and take my right foot up off the ground, if you can. You could always use a wall. I'm gonna bend my left knee and move forward into my right foot. Take my left foot up off the ground. I'm gonna bend my right knee and then move back into my left foot last time, and then the right foot is up. Could be to any degree. I'm gonna bend the left knee and then move forward into the right foot so that we're in this upright position. And then when you come forward, right, it's really the strength of the hip. So the stronger you are in your hip flexor, the easier it'll be to get lower. Like when we were circling the leg out, these are the same muscle groups that pull the leg closer to our face. It's just a different angle. But feel free to be up high, see what it's like to bend your leg and to get the better type of technique in terms of practice. So I'm gonna step the left foot back in space and come up into a high lunge. And then in a high lunge, right, your foot could be crooked, which is easier to balance. But if you're really trying to get more work in balancing, then the front foot is straight, right? But I'm bringing my ribs in and see what it's like to lean forward, because especially if you don't have a lot of flexibility, that's a good angle. But if you're leaning back in space, like I said, it's more demanding on the back leg and it's more demanding on the front of the body. Right, so we're gonna open up into a warrior two. So with the right foot forward and the right arm moving out to the right, hips are naturally turning to the left as the upper body turns to the right. It's nothing that you even have to focus on, it's gonna happen. But as you're moving here, right, a lot of times people get tense in the shoulders. So I'm gonna take the arms down, I'll let them relax. I'll move the arms out, and you could repeatedly do that. So if I had really tight shoulders, that's how I would approach it. You can turn through the right palm and lean back into the left side. And when you go back, in touching the leg, you might be like, oh, that's exactly what I need. But then for, again, some people may actually prefer it up. Like there's days where I need more leverage. And if that was the day, then I would have it up off the leg rather than down on the leg. So we'll come back into warrior two, and you can bring your right forearm or elbow on the thigh. And I'm gonna just drop my left shoulder down so that my back is a bit rounded, which will help with extension. So we're gonna pull the left shoulder up and back in space, and I'm gonna try to move my tailbone down, taking the left arm up and then bringing the left arm forward. And you could be certainly lower, right? These high positions often are viewed as not as beneficial, but in terms of strength, they're more demanding in terms of strength. Like if I get low, my flexibility is really what's supporting me as opposed to my stability, right? So we'll come back up into a warrior two, and we'll have your right leg strong and straight. I'm gonna move my left foot in a little closer, so my back foot, and I'm gonna reach out wide with my right arm, and my left arm is up if I can. But you can keep it up, you could bring it onto the leg, the thigh. Like if I try to reach past the foot or something like that, right? That's another way to get lower. But if you could see the back foot, it may be that you're leaning slightly too far forward. You know, not a terrible thing. But what I see with people is that they could go higher up on the leg and then they can get lower, right? So we'll push to the front foot, the bottom foot, and we'll lift yourself back up into a standing position, and then we'll just step the left foot forward, and I'm just in this basic standing position. So I'm gonna balance on my left foot, but I'm gonna take my right foot up towards my pelvis, and then I'm gonna bring it down. I'm gonna pull it back up. Nothing too hard, right, because you cramp up. I'm gonna bring it down, and then I'm gonna take it up, and when I take it up, I'm trying to touch my foot towards my hand, right? It's okay if you reach a little bit. I'm gonna grab either the shin or the foot. So as it gets easier for you, I think the foot is something that you can go for, but I'm gonna lift up through my left arm, right? But pushing down through my left foot, right? You could tip forward or something like that. I'm gonna stay in this upright position. Like if I was lying on the floor, that's what it would feel like. So I'm gonna bring the left arm down and bring the right foot down, and I'm gonna take my left foot up, pull it up towards the pelvis, and then bring it down. I'm gonna take it up again, so lifting it, lowering it, and then the last time I'm gonna lift it up and trying to get the foot towards the hand, right, just to touch it. Now you could just do this or hold the shin or hold the foot. If it's easy for you, you could hold the foot with both hands, something like that, right? but I'm gonna reach up through my right arm and push strong through my right foot. Like if I was pulling down on your hips, you'd feel your right foot more, right? And then I'm gonna bring the arm down, and I'm gonna bring the left foot down, and I'm gonna have my feet a little bit wider than a more narrow stance is easier to do. So feel free to have a really narrow stance, but I'm gonna move my knees in, all right? But then I'm gonna move my knees out. I'm gonna bring them in again, and then out. And if you have knee stuff, maybe you only need a couple reps. But if I could, I'm gonna bring the knees in, and I'm gonna circle out. So I'm gonna do some circles with my knees in space. Not a ton, but just a few. And then I'm gonna circle in the opposite direction. Right? And a little discomfort, I think, is okay. But if it's obviously not good, don't use it. But then I'm coming back up into a standing position. So then when I come up, I'm gonna circle the foot, right, in space. And it may not circle yet. I'm gonna circle in the opposite direction. But what you can kind of notice is that it's also moving the tibia and the fibia. So we can bring the right foot down, and then I'm gonna circle out with the left foot. So there's a lot of great variations of this. It's just, this is a good starting point. And then I'm gonna circle in the opposite direction. All right, but again, you might start to notice that the lower limb is moving, which is very good for the knee. And then you can bring that left foot down. So I'm gonna have my feet like one big foot, and step your left foot in front of your right so that you have a straight line. And with the straight line, it'll be a little bit more unstable for some people, right? So use a wall or a chair. But I'm gonna look again at 3 o'clock, right? So I'm turning my head, and then as I turn my head, I'm turning my eyes. But see if you can look a little bit more over the shoulder, not so much with the head, but with the eyes. I'm gonna turn forward and then look over my left shoulder. Right, so get your eyes to move a little bit more, and it'll help with the body, right? Rather than the head moving more, I think the eyes really make a big difference. So we'll turn forward, and we'll bring your left foot next to your right, and then your right foot's in front of your left. The longer the stance, the easier it is. You use your arms, it'll make it easier too, and that's good. I'm gonna look over my right shoulder, but now I'm gonna try to look over the shoulder behind me, if I can. I'm gonna lift the head and then turn the head and then look over my left shoulder, but like I'm looking, over my shoulder behind me, like the back of my mat is what I'm referring to. And then I'm gonna turn forward and then bring the right foot next to the left. So we'll come to the top of your mat with your feet. I'm gonna hinge forward, again into this 90-degree angle forward bend. I'm gonna bring the hands down, and I'm gonna step my left foot back into a lunge. So with the left foot back in space, I'm gonna move my hips around a little bit. Just moving the hips side to side, right? Which will help with making the stance a little bit longer and a little bit wider, and just giving you more space in your body. So we're gonna take our hands over to the left side, and you can look high over the left shoulder. So lift your head, lift your chest. Right, take your hands to the inside of the foot, or I'm just gonna try to get my armpit, my knee together. So if my hands are flat, I can get down that low. But if I'm up on fingertips, you'll notice that you're up higher. Again, they're both good ways. I'm gonna take the right arm up towards the ceiling, and then I'm gonna reach it forward in space, right? Is it again, critical to be this perfect line of 45, right? You certainly could be there, but if I change the angle, purposely changing it, right? You can see that other angles offer different benefits. Like this angle in particular is very good for my right hip, but everybody's a little different. So we're gonna bring the right hand down and step your left foot forward, and you're gonna separate your feet a little bit. I'm just showing so that you have a better view of this. My feet are wider than my shoulders. I'm gonna grab my elbows, and I'm gonna push my knees apart, but I'm gonna lift and lower my toes. So it's really good to have the hips high. And if you're not super, super low, you'll notice that you'll be able to squat lower. All right, we're gonna fold all the way forward into a forward fold. I'm gonna straighten out the feet if they were crooked, and we're gonna step your right foot back into a lunge. And it's okay if your hips are higher than your thigh, but try to make it a little bit longer, a little bit wider if you can. So I'm gonna move my hips side to side, and this will help with getting the hips to be lower. And not that a low level is superior, but it's definitely more stretching involved. So I'm gonna take my hands over to the right side, and I'm gonna look high over my right shoulder. Blocks are really great. So if you really need more extension, blocks or a chair is really, really good for the upper body. So I'm gonna take my hands to the inside and then connect my armpit and my knee together. And I'm gonna lift my left arm up in space. So push evenly through the right hand, the bottom hand, and then take the left arm forward. And again, maybe you're like, oh, this feels so good. You keep it in the angle that you have, but over time, the more yoga you do, right, it's finding new angles which can help produce more results and prevent injury too, right? If you always do the same angle, you can injure yourself. So I'm gonna take the left arm up towards the ceiling and then bring the left hand down, and then we're gonna step your right foot forward in space. So I'm gonna come down onto my hands and my knees, and from an all four position, my toes are tucked, and I'm just gonna sit back a little bit on my feet a little bit. But just because we are just in the lunge, it's significantly different within my right foot because the left leg was forward before. I'm gonna move forward in space, and then my feet are gonna be untucked, and I'm gonna sit back, something similar to a child's pose, but I'm not coming all the way down, more of an active version. But I'm gonna come forward and then come into plank, so that as you're in plank, I'm gonna widen out through the shoulders, widen out through the back, and just kind of see where you hold the weight in your hands. It's very common that people have too much weight back in the heels of the hands. So if you can, try to move forward. And if you can't move forward because it hurts, what I would do is I'd turn the hands out a little bit. And you could always turn your hands out, much easier on the wrists. I'm gonna take it up into a down dog. And in down dog, I'm gonna pull back through my thighs, right? Like if someone was pulling on my legs. And then think if someone's also pulling on your arms, and that's, giving you this sense of stretching or polarity. I'm gonna come forward and through into an up dog. So moving through the arms, lifting through the chest, and then pulling back up into a down dog. And I'm gonna come down on my knees, and I'm gonna take my hands a little bit over to the right, so I'm this 45-degree angle. And I could just get to my elbows, which is a great thing to do, right? Or blocks, if you couldn't get that low. But if it's all right, I'm gonna lift the elbows, and I'm keeping my head up, but your head could certainly be down. And what's more difficult to do is to bring your torso down as opposed to your head, right? It's good to bring the head down, but I'm trying to emphasize on my chest, and that's putting more stretching into the chest and shoulders. So come up if you're ready to come up, and move your hands over to the left side on a 45-degree angle, and you could certainly just come down to the elbows. And if we were in the same room and I saw you and you were in the middle, that's good too, right? But everybody's a little bit physically asymmetrical. So you can kind of see when you're off to the left, maybe this is needed more. So I'm gonna take my elbows off the ground, and I'm thinking that my chest is moving to the floor, but I'm also imagining that my chest is moving beyond my hands. And this will get more and more into your upper back, right? Which is, a particularly tight area for most people. And then I'm gonna come back into the middle, and then when I come into the middle, I'm gonna come down to my elbows, and I'm gonna lift into plank, but on my forearms, right? And you don't have to do this, but I'm gonna lower my hips and my thighs to the moment where you start to really feel like you have to use your abdomen. Like you'll start to feel like it's necessary to do that. And then when you get that, then you can start to go back into realigning your hips, right? Not that you have to be in a perfect line, but with people that are weak, their hips are gonna be really high. So you're gonna lower your hips down, your thighs, and then I'm gonna take my elbows, a little bit more forward than my shoulders, so that when I'm in this Sphinx position, I'm trying to emphasize on lifting rather than rounding, right? It's extension. I'm gonna look over the right shoulder, and I move the head as much as I do in these classes so that your neck doesn't feel tight, it feels fluid. We're gonna look over the left shoulder, And as I look high over the left shoulder, again, I might want to use my eyes a little bit more to any place, right? You could really, if you look to different spots in your room, you'd be like, oh, wow, that helps me more than a certain angle. So I'm gonna come back into the middle and bring my hands just underneath my shoulders and just let the shoulders kind of move forward, which is, common, right? A forward shoulder. But then pick the shoulders up away from the floor and you'll notice it'll immediately pick your chest up. So I'm gonna take my chest up off the floor and my legs up off the floor. But if I'm using my back, right? Like if I was pulling, right? A band or a weight, like, weight training, there are rows, right? If you're using your back, your chest and your upper body will lift more. So we're gonna come all the way down, and then when I come down, I'm gonna take my left arm up take my right arm up to the right. Feel free to have your palm down, but for today, I'm gonna turn the palm up so the shoulder's actually forward. So this is all binding, right? I'm gonna look to the left and step my left leg over my right, and it might take a little bit of time for you to feel the stretch that is being provided for you. Right, but the internal rotation is really, really good for the posterior of the shoulder. It's not as much of a stretch in the front of the shoulder. You'll get some, but not as much. Then you can roll onto the abdomen and then take your left arm up to the left. Feel free to keep the palm down. I'm gonna turn the palm up towards the ceiling and turn my head to the right. And for me, it takes like 5-10 seconds, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's what it's doing for my shoulder. So you might not immediately feel it. And that's why a lot of times people prefer the palm down, because it's more obvious. So I'm gonna step my right leg over my left, and this is, again, all bound positions, right? Our internal rotation in yoga. But the internal rotation kind of doesn't get as much, I don't know. It's I don't think people view it as beneficial, but it could really help loosen up the shoulders and the spine. So I'm gonna roll back onto my abdomen, then my hands are just underneath my shoulders, and then pick the shoulders up to about the level of the elbows. So like if I was like in a low push-up, this is what you wanna be doing with your shoulders. I'm gonna push into the hands and lift my torso up even a little bit higher. And in terms of leverage, this could be the level, right? But if you could, I'm gonna lift into this higher position, right? Now, I'm not suggesting you do this for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, but if I did it for a longer period of time, some of the time I'd be lower, right? Or even all the way down. And then some of the time I come back up, right? Just if you were swimming underwater, right, you'd need air. I'm gonna look over my right shoulder. I'm gonna look center and then over the left. You can look center and up, right? And not that you have to look behind you, but that's more arcing. So we're gonna slowly, slowly come down. Keep the tension in your hands. You could push to all fours, or you could push to plank and then back up into a down dog. And I'm gonna come down onto my knees, and I'm gonna sit on a yoga block on the second level. And you could sit lower than me, you could sit higher than me. If you have a yoga strap or a TheraBand, you could use it. If you don't have these things, you could just hook your thumbs, and that's kind of similar, right? But I'm just gonna pull my band apart, and I'm gonna pull the band or the strap in towards my navel, right? And this is, again, what you were doing on the floor. I'm just gonna let it relax, right? And then I'm gonna pull it apart again, but this time I'm gonna move it up to either the height of my shoulders. Certainly it could be lower, higher is more obvious, right? It could be higher. But just one more time, I'm gonna pull it into the navel, right? And draw the shoulder back, bring the elbows back in space. So like if I was up against the wall, which is a good thing to do, is that I'd try to get my shoulders back up against the wall more. And then I'm just gonna let that relax. Now, if you have a yoga strap, have your hands really wide on the strap or a TheraBand, and just take it up overhead and like a capital Y, this could be the position, And it's not superior to have the arms further back, but it might be the angle that you actually need. All right, and I like a static hold. I think it's good for anyone, no matter what your strength or flexibility level is, but it could be a motion too, right? I'm just gonna hold a static position. But over time, I may take it lower. Over time, I may bring it higher. And then I'm just gonna bring it forward and I'm gonna bring it down. And then you can take the block out and you can put it off to the side and widen through the shoulders. So different than, a back bend, it's pronation, right? So I'm gonna lift a plank, push really strong through the fingertips, and then take it back up into a down dog. And you could just stay in down dog, right? You could just reach through the heels of the feet. But I'm gonna come forward and through into an up dog. So I'm gonna move forward through my arms, lift through the chest, and then pull back up into a down dog. And then I'm gonna come forward with my feet, 2 feet. You like going to the top of the mat, of course you could do that. I'm gonna bring my hands on my hips. I'm gonna lift through my upper back, right? So as I keep lifting through my torso, it's actually more stretching in the legs, right? And then you're all the way up to standing. So just let your head tilt over to your right shoulder. Don't let your torso tilt, just let your head tilt. And then your chin could be down, it could certainly be up. And if you're moving your head, you might be like, oh, it feels so good, right? So it's not like, there's no wrong way of doing it, but as you do it differently, you can really see what's more valuable. So I'm gonna lift the head and then move the head over to the opposite shoulder, just to the left. Same thing, the chin could be down, it could be up, and maybe one side just feels way tighter. You could do a little bit more throughout the day on that side, which will help loosen it up. And then just bringing the head back into the middle, just neutral. So I'm gonna take my left foot up off the floor and I'm gonna rotate my knee and my foot out, right? But then I'm gonna move my knee in and then my foot is out. So this is internal rotation. So I'm gonna move it out again and then move it in. And once you get the hang of it, then it could be more of a fluid motion. Not that it has to be this, fluid motion, but over time it can. And then I'm gonna bring the left foot down, I'm gonna take the right foot up, I'm gonna rotate the thigh out, the foot out, which is really tree pose. But then I'm gonna move the knee in and the foot out, which is Virasana, right? But then you're gonna move it in and out. And I really like these, but sometimes people get really tired or they tighten up from them. I would take breaks in doing it, right? But very good for the pelvis, right? And then just bringing that right foot down, and with that foot down, I'm gonna hinge forward again, extending forward in space. I'm gonna try to lift the front of my feet. Lift strong through the upper back. Right? It's good to be really low, right? I say this in any class, right? It's more lower back. But if you're really trying to get better posture, right, the extensions really make a difference. So lift through the shoulders and lift yourself all the way up into a standing position. And then as you come up to standing, I'm gonna take the left foot into the inside of the right thigh, just for a tree position. And I'm gonna push evenly through my big toe and my baby toe, right? I'm gonna take the arms up overhead. It's asymmetrical, so if you took a photo of yourself, it's gonna look a little crooked. So keep the ribs in, reach through the arms, right? And as you lift through the arms, right, and you can look to that one spot, which is really good for meditation and balance. But if you're really trying to challenge your balance, if you look around, not that that's superior, but it is harder to do. I'm gonna bring the arms down and bring the knee forward and the foot down, and then taking the right foot into the inside of the left thigh. And sometimes it slips, right? You could certainly hold it here, but then I'm gonna push through the heel of my foot. I'm gonna take the arms up, and then as you're reaching up, right, I'm extending them through the arms. I'm trying to bring the arms further back if I can, right? But you can try to keep the ribs in. And again, you could just look at that one spot, but if I look, like there's a stool that's to my left. That's a particular difficult angle to look at for me here, but again, Just have your eyes centered if that's what you need. And then we're gonna bring the knee forward and the foot down, and then the arms are gonna come down. So not that you need a block, but I'm gonna use a block. Just for a moment, I'm gonna squeeze the block in between my thighs, right? Not super hard, but squeezing in high and strong enough, but then you can also let it relax. So I'm squeezing in. I'm very narrow on my hips. So as I squeeze in, I can actually feel that it's creating a little bit more width in my pelvis. I'm gonna let that relax. Then one more time, I'm gonna squeeze in, but really good for your knees, right? Something like this. And for women, you wanna make it wide enough so that your knees aren't falling in. That's why I like the middle level. So I'm gonna take the block out, and then I'm gonna squeeze the block with my hands, index fingers and thumbs. So when you can just bend the elbows, and you can actually see how well your index finger's pushing into the block. Now, when our arms are straight, you can't really see it. But when you push, right, I'm gonna take the block up to the height of my eyes, and then I'm gonna take it up just a little bit higher than my hairline in the front, and then I'm gonna take it just about overhead. And this particular angle is pretty difficult for me, as opposed to all the way overhead. All the way overhead can be challenging too from day to day for people. But I'm gonna push with the feet, but try to keep the ribs in. I'm gonna bring it forward and bring it down. And I'm gonna just do that one more time. I'm gonna take the block up, right? Height of my hairline or higher. And for women, right, it's just natural for women to sway their back, right? And for men, they sway their back because their shoulders are tight. So you wanna, not that you have to be perfectly centered or in the middle, but if I was doing a handstand, right, I could find that line, which is really hard to do, right? I'm gonna take the arms forward, the block forward, and the block down. But I'm gonna hold the block, have the block flat like in its low level, into your rib cage, and squeeze into the block, and just turn to the left, and just round your back a little bit towards your left foot, right? Now when we're in this high position, it's more stretching out the upper back. I'm gonna lift my torso and go back into the right. So my left side's stretching out a little bit more. So you can only go so far with this, but you can feel how direct it's affecting the side of your body. So I'm gonna come back into the middle, I'm gonna turn to my right foot, and I'm gonna round. And maybe you're not like, oh, I don't know about this block, right? The bigger the block or the object is, the more your back will round. So if you didn't feel like it was enough stretching, I turn the block so that it's in its second position, right? If it was on the floor, it'd be on its side, right? But then I'm gonna lift and I'm gonna articulate back over to my left. And it's not critical that your tailbone's down, but you want your glutes to be working when you're back bending, right? To some degree, unless they're really tight. And then I'm coming back into the middle, and then I'm neutral. So I'll put the block down. I'm gonna come back up into plank, where all fours to set it up. And I'm gonna widen out through the shoulders. We're gonna take it back up into a down dog. So pull back through the thighs, pull back through the hips. If you can come forward and through into an up dog. And then you can pull back up into a down dog. Right? And then I'm coming down onto my knees, but I'm gonna stand up on my knees, and feel free to have your heels up for this, but I'm gonna turn and look for my right foot. But if you can, try to see further behind you, like 2 or 3 feet behind you. Right? That's a good place to start. But then as I go back, I could reach for the foot. And again, if it felt like it was too much leverage, right? Maybe you're not reaching for the foot, but we're gonna lift the left arm up towards the ceiling. Now you could look up to the hand, but I don't know, for me personally, I really like looking to the floor, and I like turning towards the floor. And we could take the left arm in the direction of the right foot, but you wanna keep lifting. That's it, it's really good, ladies. Then you can lift yourself back up, and you're gonna turn and twist to the left. I'm gonna look for my left foot, but I'm gonna look more towards the back of my mat. Right? And then maybe we could reach for the foot and take the arm up. And it's really smart to come out of positions when you need to. Like your body might actually say, you should come out. Right? I'm gonna reach the right arm in the direction of my left foot and just feel what's better. I mean, it's gonna be a more obvious stretch having it in the direction of the foot, but you're turning to the foot, but you're trying to lift towards the ceiling. So take that arm back up and you can lift yourself back up, and then we're back up into an upright position. So I'm gonna sit on the yoga block just one more time on any degree. So if I'm trying to sit lower, right, what you could do is you could sit in this high level or higher levels, and over time it will get easier. And then you could try to sit a little bit lower. And say you could only hold it for like 5 seconds or 10 seconds. That's still pretty good. And then you could go back to the high level again. And then the more you sit on the lower levels, like if I was trying to get to the floor, right? There's nothing wrong with sitting just above the ground or even higher. It's just, again, if you feel like you're relaxing in it, you'll most likely get to the ground. And some people may never get this low. Right, so I'm gonna bring the hands down and I'm gonna step back up into plank. Right, push strong through the hands, pull back up into a down dog. And if you want to, I'm just using this as more like how you can see how much you're improving. I'm gonna come forward and through into an up dog. So you can move through your arms, you can lift through your chest, and then you can pull back up into a down dog, and we'll come down on the knees, and we're gonna come into a seated position so that your hands are just underneath your shoulders and your feet are forward, your knees are gonna be bent, and we're gonna take the hands just behind or just underneath the shoulders, but retract through the shoulders and lift through the chest. And then if we can, we're gonna push through the hands, the feet, and lift the pelvis off the ground. And I say this all the time, if you really wanna lift the hips higher, you may wanna just lift them not as your high point. Like, so again, you can relax and you can lift, because you might not come up as high. But I'm gonna move the head up, so I'm just looking up towards the ceiling, which is a great place to start with, especially if you're wanting to take the head back. But I'm gonna bring the hips down, and I'm just gonna relax for a moment, right? But I'm gonna push through the hands and lift through the collarbone again, and elevate the pelvis off the ground. I'm gonna move the weight around just to stretch out the wrist and the hands, right? But I'm gonna look and maybe look a little bit further back, and not that you have to take the head all the way back. And like I said, it with other positions, maybe it's just a couple seconds you do that, and then you bring it back to where it was. Lift your pelvis. Move your head up if you brought it down. Bring your hips down, and just move your hips a little bit closer toward your feet, just to stretch out the wrists and the shoulders a little bit more. And you can move around or be static. You just need enough pressure to open the chest and the shoulders. So I'm gonna move the hips back in space and have my feet together and my knees are wide, and I'm gonna push my knees apart, driving my legs apart. So with the legs pushing apart, my hips are a little bit off the floor. And if that wasn't good for you, you just keep your hips down. But when you sit on a block, right, you can really feel how it's prying open this is sometimes the tightest area for some people. So I'm gonna lower the hips, and then as I lower the hips, I'm just gonna take the knees up, and I'm gonna wrap the arms around the legs and push the knees out into the arms. And you could look straight up, but you could, again, just for your neck, is you could look at different angles, or like if you were looking for something, right? Which is something that you may do, right, from time to time, is that it'll help in manipulating the neck. I know it's kind of random, right? But you're never turning your head perfectly equally to one side more than the other. So I'm gonna release the arms, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my left foot with my hands, and I'm gonna try to get my armpit and my knee together, which is really, really good for your hip and your back, right? This type of position. But I'm pulling on the foot, and what's difficult is the outside arm for people. So if you bring the arm down when you need it, that's good. But then you could take it up so that the outside arm is actually above the shin. And some people are really long in the torso, so just keep getting longer. But what I often see with people is that as they age, they're shorter, right? So you want to get above the leg if you can. So you're going to elevate the left leg up if you could. You could push it forward in space, you know, arm straight. You could hold the shin or the calf muscle too, right? You don't have to hold the foot here. Just going to go back to getting the armpit and the knee together and then bringing that foot down. So I'm going to take the right leg back in space. I'm going to hold the foot and I'm going to try to get the armpit and the knee together. So, you know, at first just relax and be wherever you're at. And as it gets easier, then try to reposition yourself so that you can fit the knee inside of the armpit. Not that it has to fit perfectly, right? But you could also just take the outside arm down and let it relax. That's good. And then I'm going to take it up again. It's good, Lois. Yeah, so as you take the, yeah, it's good, Lisa. If you take the leg up in space, right, you pull with your hands, right, of course, but use your hip, right, use the strength of your hip to get your leg closer to your upper body or face. I'm just going to go back to armpit and knee together, just bringing it in and then bringing that foot down. So I'm going to have my right knee stacked over my left. So you're just stacking the knees like a half cow face, but I'm going to come forward to any degree, and there's going to be some compression. If you're on top of your leg with your torso, great. But if you're not, what you could do is you could put something between your torso and your thigh. And that's very good in stretching out your back. Similar to plow, but it is different. But I'm going to reach for my foot with my strap or my hands, and then I'm going to try to move forward in space. Right? I'm imagining that my torso is going beyond my foot, right? Just to get into the back of the leg. Right? I'm going to lift my torso up just a little bit, not all the way, and then I'm going to move forward and down. Now, if I needed more leverage, obviously getting someone to push on you or something like that can be great if it's the right amount of pressure. But if I take my hands off of my foot, maybe it's just one arm, a little extra weight, and that can help bring you lower. So I'm going to lift through the torso. I'm going to take my right leg off of my left, and my left is going to be over my right. And then as we stack the knees, not that they have to be perfectly stacked, but this is what we're working towards. And then I'm going to move forward and down. So if some people have a difficult time getting the leg fully straight, the extra weight in the top leg, right, can help with getting the back of the leg to the ground. And depending on your anatomy, your leg may not fully straighten out, right? But I'm going to move forward in space, and my foot, my right side, sickles a little bit. So it's harder for me to pull the outside of my foot. So what I do is I'm just pulling with my right hand rather than my left, because my foot kind of rolls out. You know, I've rolled this ankle or twisted this ankle a few times. That could be the case. But I'm going to take either one or both hands up off the foot, and that's going to bring me lower. You could always bring it down, right? Because it's going to be way more difficult. But then when you need it, then you could take the hands up, and this will help get you lower and lower, right? But then you can lift yourself up in space, and then just have the feet a little bit wider than, say, your shoulders. And I'm going to let the legs carry over to the right. I'm going to let the legs carry over to the left. Just some 90-90 motion of the legs. Similar to what we did in a standing position before we did tree. This is much easier to do, but careful with the back knee, okay? So I'm gonna come forward over my right leg. So my left knee sits on the inside of my right foot. Could be more a 90-degree angle. And I'm gonna move forward over my right leg. And what I like to do is when I first start to feel the stretch, this is where I'll kind of stay for a little bit. So even though I could go lower, I'm directing more of the stretch into the outside of my hip. You know, as I get lower, it's still in the hip, but you'll notice it'll start to affect the upper body as well. You could be high, you could be low. Now I'm low here, and you could stay low, but I'm gonna lift myself up, just not all the way, but like 3/4 of the way, and then I'm gonna move down again. So it's almost like you're obviously working with your physicality, but it's your nervous system. So your nervous system it's like the moment you come out, it's easier, of course. But the moment you go in, that's where it has its greatest influence. So you can lift yourself up. I'm gonna take my torso up. I'm gonna lift my left knee up and direct my left knee out. I'm gonna push both of my legs apart. And then I'm gonna bring my right knee on the inside of my left foot. And we can move forward in space to any degree. I'm probably about the same height, if you know, just on, I'm guessing, right? But I feel like this great outer stretch in the outside of my hip, similar to pigeon. But I like this because it's not too much weight in the hip. Like you can relax more in this position. That's why I like it so much. Now I could lift up a little bit higher, or I could just go a little bit lower, and maybe you're all the way down and you like that. But very good for the hip, very good for the back. And also too, it's very rare that you're rotating your thigh in like this, which is really good for your pelvis, right? If you're only rotating out, and that's what happens in life for most people, it can calcify the hip, right? The pelvis becomes one-dimensional, right? So I'm gonna lift my torso, and then as I come up, I'm just gonna be up in this upright position, and then I'm just gonna have the legs up, and you can wrap the arms around the legs, right? And I'm gonna look over my right shoulder just a bit, not all the way, just to the right. And I'm gonna look to the left. And then I'm gonna look center and up. And just see where your nose points to, because your head might consistently turn to one direction more than the other. Again, not that that's terrible, but if you start to notice like, wow, I'm really turning more to one direction more than the other, you can change that, and then that really has I think a positive effect, so that you get more into the middle and more balanced. That's good. And then you can just bring the head in the middle, and what we'll do is I'm gonna lie back on my back. I'm gonna have my block in between my legs, and I'm just gonna squeeze into the block, pull the shoulders back in space, and I'm gonna elevate my heels if that's better, right? And both can be good. But I like, because it takes a little less pressure off the lower back and more into the mid and upper back, right? I'm gonna lower my upper back into the ground, my mid back, my low back, and my pelvis and my heels. And just one more time, I'm gonna lift up, pull back through the shoulders, right? Elevate through the hips, squeeze into the block, then slowly bring the upper back down, the mid back down, the low back, the pelvis, and then I'm gonna bring the block, right, underneath my pelvis. If I want, you could stay active, of course, just keep repeating the active version, but I'm gonna take the block underneath my pelvis where it's on the low level, mid level, or high level, right? You can decide how high you want it. And I think it's really good to change the levels, because it gives you perspective. So I'm gonna stretch just my left leg forward in space so my right leg stays bent, and then the whole left side stretching out more. So if you have injuries on your left side or just tightness on your left side, it pulls this whole side apart, right? In a good way, right? It's creating more and more length and extension. And you could stay like that. You could also bend the knee and stretch the right leg forward. And like I say, in a lot of positions, it probably feels good in both ways, but one side might need more manipulation. And that's why you might want to do one side a little bit more when you're on your back or when you're using your blocks. It's good to take both legs forward, like for just in general, like think of like a taller male, right? They round as they get older, right? And this will help lift the lower back. And that's really good for the neck. So often with an older gentleman is that they'll lose the articulation in their neck or in their lower back or both. And this is a way to, restore that. But I can, it's a much greater pull. It can be too much weight on the back, so you go back to where your knees are bent. And you could stay, right, of course. You could also take the block out and you could put it off to the side, and your legs could be bent or your legs could be straight. I'm just gonna give you a short relaxation. Arms could be on you. You could cover yourself with a blanket, right? It's good to have the head elevated if you need it. And if I really needed it, I would use it from time to time, right? But I'm gonna have my arms either beside me or on me, and my palms are up or down, right? But think I'm with you and I'm pulling on your feet a little bit. And if I was pulling on one leg more than the other, you could feel how that's distracting and creating more space in the hip. Right? You can relax into your thighs, into the outsides of your hips, into your lower back, and just feel the weight of your pelvis. And it's really like you're leaning back into the floor, right? Gravity is to your advantage. Shoulders are relaxed, arms are relaxed, face is relaxed. You can always open and close the mouth, which can help release the jaw. And just relax through your forehead, your scalp, and I always say this in classes, right? It's easy to just skip practice, but it's always better when you don't, right? It's always, there's not a day that I don't practice, and I typically practice throughout the day. Like most days I'm doing many, many, many different forms of practice. And you could certainly lie longer, so you're like, oh, this is great, it's the best. Definitely take more time. But what you can do is you could bend the knees and just take a couple breaths. Think I'm pulling on your thighs with your knees bent, and you could roll to either side, and you can lift yourself up. And when you come up, you can come into a seated position. And it's not that you have to sit on a higher surface, but it can produce more extension. And I still like to think that the floor, because you're just on the floor, I still think that the floor is pushing into your back. And I'm not moving my legs, but I'm imagining that my thighs are wider, and this helps with it too. And I'm using more effort and sitting up. And I'm not, especially when I'm meditating, I'm not sitting perfectly, but before meditation or after meditation, right, I am organizing my structure. So I'm gonna turn my palms up, I'm gonna slide my hands back, shoulders are back, right? And you could just stay like this, but you could also bring your hands together if you'd like to. It's just a gesture of thanks. I hope you had a great class. Thanks for coming, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. And yeah, I'm around if you ever have any questions. We'll see you, Lisa. We'll see you, Lois. Have a great day.
Have a great one.
Take care. Happy New Year.
New Year.
We'll see you, Lois. Bye-bye. Have a great day.